Yes, hello and congratulations, Matthias, to your Microsoft MVP award. The first one, well deserved for Power BI tools and all the community work.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks very much. Obviously, I knew that there was an application ongoing, but I had no idea if and when it would happen, right? And when the email came through last week on Feb 1st, I was completely unprepared, right? Sometimes when it's the first of the month, you think about it and say, ooh, maybe it's my lucky month. Last week, I didn't think about this at all. And so it was a really nice surprise. Very good.
Cool, yeah. Well deserved, as I said. You're speaking at lots of conferences. If anyone wants to know more about all the conferences, our last talk is a very good source. We talked a lot about them. And today we have a very technical, interesting topic. It was cost you quite some preparation. The transfer of data models from analysis services to the tabular model in Power BI.
Yeah, indeed.
Here you come. I think can start with the screen and the stage is yours.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Yeah, I did announce it on Twitter a few days ago based on someone actually asking about it. So what we want to do today is, well, first of all, is completely unsupported, right? So just putting that out there as a disclaimer. This is not sort of official Microsoft supported, but it's the only way you can achieve this. So basically, imagine you've got existing tabular models in analysis services, specifically Azure analysis services. You've developed them possibly using Tabular Editor or possibly Visual Studio. And you actually want to continue to develop those models in Power BI Desktop for whatever reason, right? That's what I want to show and talk about, because pbi-tools is there to help you and to make that a reality. And there's no other supported tooling, there's no other tooling at all for this. So let me show you what I've done in terms of setup. So I've got SSMS here, where I've got an A is Azure, so an Azure Analysis Services instance. It's called pbi-tools AAS01. And I've got, as you probably don't find surprising, a model in here called Contoso. And that's the exact same model I've been using many times before for various demos. In fact, if you go to the pbi-tools landing page in GitHub and you look at the listing of demo repositories, this one here is the one I'm actually using here. So we've got that, and I've got PBI desktop here with a live connection to that AAS model. So you can see if I just put a slicer here and let's say maybe color, why not? And then focus on filter on Azure. There we go. So that's all live and it works, and it's pretty much getting data straight out of AS. So let's say you've decided, well, and then the other thing is so let's say you wanted to migrate to Power BI and Power BI Premium in particular, right? That's obviously something which is supported by Microsoft, right? Just recently, AAS to Power BI Premium migrations were announced. And in fact, if you go into your Power BI tenant, there we go, Power BI. There we go. There's a brand new option. I'm assuming that's been rolled out to all tenants already, right? So here you've got analysis services migrations. So that's not what I want to talk about, because that's what you get out of the box from Microsoft. And the really cool thing here is that they do connection string forwarding, right? So you can continue to use your AS Azure connection strings, and the Power BI backend will pretty much automatically redirect that for you, which is pretty cool. So that's not what we want to talk about. What I want to talk about instead is how do you take an existing AS model and continue and actually move it into a Power BI desktop file, so you can edit it in there, right? That's the thing which is not easily available right now. So we can also see here the report we were just looking at is also deployed to this particular workspace. So I've got my analysis services remote connection here. Then I've got a sort of marker data set, right? So this is a Power BI data set, but one which pretty much just contains the connection information, nothing else. And then we've got the report connected to it. Looks like this, exactly the same thing, right? So how would you go about this? First thing, open up. Assuming you don't even have access to the source code, right? I'm just going straight from scratch here. So first thing, open up the model from your AES instance. Just going to do that here and make sure I use the correct credentials. Here we go. So I've got Contoso. That's exactly the same model. Here we go. We've got that. We've got 7 tables, one of them hidden. We've got a Azure SQL data source and relationships. We've got a few M expressions, so on and so forth, right? So that's all here. So let me take that and then actually save it as a file to my file system. Here we go. I'm just going to call this Contoso BIM. There we go. If I then open up that folder, so it happens to be in here. There we go, Contoso BIM. So if I just open this up in VS Code, we can see that's my model, right? Data sources, tables, relationships, cultures, roles, expressions. That's all fine. There are also no secrets in here, right? So for data source, we can see the credential only has the username specified, but not the password. So that's the one thing which isn't actually exported for obviously, sensitivity reasons. So I've got this, right? I've got my sources here. So how do I convert that into a Power BI desktop file? There are a few, let's say, adjustments or corrections you need to make. And that's what I want to talk through. So the most important one is that data sources in a Power BI model, in a Power BI desktop model, are never explicitly defined. So when in analysis services, we actually have our data sources declared like this. In Power BI, that would not work and is not expected. And we basically have to completely remove any data source declarations. So that's the first thing. The other thing is there are two types of data sources. This one is what's called structured. There's another type, which is a so-called provider data source. Provider data sources are also referenced as legacy data sources sometimes. There used to be a really nice blog post on the Power BI blog, in fact, on the AS blog years ago, where the two of them were contrasted. For the life of me, I can't find it anymore. I wanted to show it for reference here. I just can't. Sorry about that. It was quite a while ago, basically, when the 1400 compatibility level was introduced. So that's really important here, because if your model happens to have legacy data sources or provider data sources instead of structured, you'll need to basically convert those data sources, but that's probably a whole different section. So just for simplicity, I'm assuming you're already using structured data sources here. Specifically structured data sources in conjunction with M partitions, right? So if we go to any of our tables, we can then see that the partitions are import mode partitions, and specifically of type M. So I basically have a Power Query expression in here. That's the other thing which is required. If you had a legacy data source, the expression would basically be encoded into your data source connection string as a base 64 blob, if you will, and the partition itself would basically just have a reference to the data source. Those ones cannot easily be migrated. So again, I'm assuming we already have structured data sources in place. We've got partitions of type M, then we're good. Then the other thing is, in AS, in order to be able to access anything, you've got to have a role in place, at least one role in place, right? In Power BI, roles are only needed for row level security, so basically to restrict access, right? The standard access without RLS is provided using, the Power BI service permission settings. Whereas in AAS, there is no such thing. In AAS, everything is basically done via explicit roles. So what I've done here is basically to provide a read permission to specific members of my tenant, in this case myself. That is something which you'll likely have to remove as well, and instead set Power BI service permissions once the model has been deployed there, right? So those are the two changes, really, roles and data sources. I can, I could do this in Tabular Editor, but you know what? I can literally go in here and actually remove roles and data sources right there. As long as I sort of looked at, commas and all of that, I'm still getting valid JSON. So here we go. Made that change. And then there's one other change. And that one I'm going to change in Tabular Editor, actually. So let me open this very same file. There we go. That's the one I just edited. We can see now there is no data source anymore. There is no rule anymore, right? So one other thing I need to do is I go to model, go to the model node. There's one particular option, which is this one. That's the one almost with the longest name. Which is a default Power BI data source version. Bit of a tongue breaker. You need to go in here and actually change that to v3. Not going to go into too much detail here. Just take my word for it. v3 is what current versions of Power BI Desktop expect here. So that's one change required. If I save that, we can see, given that I have this one still open, we can see that this particular element was added. All right. So, and sorry. Now I'm pretty much ready to to use pbi-tools and sort of plug that into a PBIX project. What I need to have for that is all the other pieces that happen to exist in a PBIX file, right? So obviously I only have the model right now, but the PBIX file contains sort of metadata, contains report and whatnot. I've made this quite easy for you. If you go to the pbi-tools GitHub, there's one repository called resources, this one. Sorry. Just as I'm beginning to talk. Something is stuck in my throat. So this repo is a public repository, as you can see, and I'm basically maintaining sort of blank PBIX sources in here from various versions of Power BI Desktop. In fact, I haven't updated this since August, but that's not a problem at all. So what you can do if you want to simplify this, copy, go to your local system, do a git clone, and bring this one down. Here we go. Very nice. So I've got this new folder now, resources, and I'm just going to go and grab the sort of the highest folder name. So 108 happens to be the most recent one I've committed here. So that pretty much contains the sources extracted from a completely blank Power BI Desktop instance. Literally what I do here, whenever a new version of Power BI Desktop comes out, I open it up, do nothing, and do save as straight away, right? And so that gives me everything that you get out of the box with no other settings. So if I copy that and put it in here, so this is where we're going to build our new this is where we're going to build our new project. So let's call that Contoso model. Why not? So that's that. And then the BIM file I just edited. Let's make sure I've saved it. Yeah. So the BIM file, gonna copy. I go to this new folder, and then I go into model, and I paste it in here. Now, this folder expects either a broken out model definition using pbi-tools extraction format, or alternatively, it expects the entire model in one single file. Either is fine. However, if you put it there as a single file, the file needs to be called database.json. As you can see, there's already one there. So I'm going to remove this one and also the culture subfolder. And then I'm simply going to go and rename my BIM file to database.json, because that's what pbi-tools expects and is looking for, right? So here we go. And now I've done whatever I needed to do to compile that into PBIX. In fact, because it contains a model, I need to compile it into PBIT, right? pbi-tools compile with models only works with PBIT files. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's use pbi-tools compile. Again, if you don't remember the exact syntax, just run the tool with the command, and then it basically tells you what you need to specify. So we need a folder reference where my sources come from. So that would be control model. Then we need an out path, but it's optional. If you don't specify it, it basically infers what the file name will be. And then most importantly, we need to specify PBIT as the format, because once again, that's the only format supported when a model is in place. So just running that, and here we go. That was easy and quick. And so we have a new file, control.model.pbit. So let's see if that works. That's the one thing I haven't actually tried. I'd like risk. Right, so let's see what happens. Okay. So I'm loading my PBIT file now, which means I'm being presented with all the parameters defined in my model. Parameters are basically M expressions that are marked as parameters, but the default values are already filled in. And in fact, in this case, those are the exact same values that actually come from my AAS model, right? So I basically don't need to change anything at all. I just press load. It's going to prompt me for database credentials. And let me just pop those in. I hope I've got, yeah, okay, sorry. I was just worried that my window would come up on the screen I'm sharing. So I've got username here, and then I've got password here. There we go, connect. And there we go. It's reading data. I've got my model here. It's an import model now. It lives in my Power BI desktop instance, right? If I go here, I can see that, there we go. Let's arrange those tables very nicely. So we've got our dimensions, stores, products, customers, sales is our fact table. We've got date, and then we've got some disconnected tables. Here we go. Pretty much job done, right? So let's replicate the matrix I used earlier, just to make sure we get the exact same figures. So I had sales amount. Here we go. We can see we even have the same formatting, because obviously that's all held as model metadata. And then that was broken by the product hierarchy. And we had continent as our column. There we go. So 210, 600, 881. If I go back to my here we go, right? So this is Power BI connecting to my AAS model. And then here, this is me having replicated a brand new Power BI desktop model, starting off from AAS sources, which I extracted via Tabular Editor, as you've seen, with 3 changes, right? I removed the data source declaration, I removed the role declaration, and I added the Power BI data source version attribute. So that's it. And if I now go and save this, here we go. Let's call this contoso model.pbix and publish. Tool talk. There we go. It's now publishing my thick report. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show. So let's go here. Let's go full circle. There we go. Right. So now I've got a proper Power BI model, right? There's no connection to analysis service or anything else. Everything is handled in Power BI, including permissions, including credentials. And I've got my report here. There we go. Cool. Yeah, that's it pretty much. I'm so relieved that it's actually raw, because I
Wow, this is amazing. It was much faster and easier than I expected, and Donald says the same here. It's easier than he thought, and yeah, just some lines of code. So the most of the code is quite the same. This is just the secret of it. And
well, I mean, the thing is, right, obviously, at the end of the day, it's the exact same underlying engine, right? So Power BI and Power BI Premium and Power BI Pro and Azure Analysis Services and even Analysis Services on-prem, they use exactly the same backend. They use exactly the same metadata. Nowadays, the server versions are also kept in sync and are pretty close. So I mean, let's just take a look at this. Obviously, I've got a connection here. So yeah, there we go, 16060. If we go to server properties, we can see looking at supported compat level. This one is always a bit tricky to sort of show because it's so long nowadays. So yeah, there we go. It goes all the way to 1602, which is precisely the same max level that you currently get in Power BI Premium, right? So again, right, it's exactly the same engine, and the only difference is around data source declaration and permissions, right? Which is why it's actually so easy. But of course, the crucial thing we relied on was this little bit here, right? pbi-tools compile, which obviously is the one thing that's not currently supported by Microsoft. So that's why it's virtually the only way for you to get there. And then the other thing, obviously, what I said before, if you happen to have a non-Power BI model which uses legacy data sources, you would have a bit more work to do in order to convert them so that everything basically comes from M expressions.
Yeah, also Donald has, it's not exactly the original block, I think, but there is another block about this legacy versus structured model. Yeah, he posted it, so in
yeah,
the
very good.
LinkedIn stream.
Yes, I did find one as well, which I've got open here. Open here. Elegant BI. I think that is who is behind this. I think it's I think it's
Yeah,
one
a
of the
little.
guys on the cat team.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got a bit
But
of a
it's quite interesting that there's so many blogs written about it. This migration feature was kind of hyped, and afterwards it's so easy, just with some lines of code. Okay, it's not supported. Yes, I know it, but yeah, it's if you,
um, Mike Kowalski, right? I think is his
mm,
name. I'm really sorry if I messed
mm,
up the name now, but yeah. So he's on the cat team, and he actually wrote about the topic of legacy versus structured data sources, and what the origin is, and why that's relevant. And again, in order to use Power BI Desktop, it's only one particular type of model is supported, which is again inferred structured data source with M partitions, right?
mm,
You can, just to be clear, right? So if you have Power BI Premium, you can deploy any type of model into Premium, right? So that's there's no limitation. Even legacy data sources are fine. But what we're talking about here is Power BI Desktop, right? Power BI Desktop has certain assumptions and limitations. So that's where that's coming from.
mm.
Cool. What do you think? Do we have any questions in the chat or so?
No, not anymore. Thanks, Donald, for all the input. And yeah, quite astonishing easy. So I think there's not so much to ask. So you can make analysis services self-service ready into Power BI desktop with a few lines of code. Quite very
Well,
nice thing.
arguably without, right?
Yeah,
this is about
without the code,
removing
yes,
stuff,
with
right?
removing and knowing what you're doing. Yeah, very nice. And sometimes things are easier when you
Yeah.
know what you do in the code. This is my key take out of today. And yeah, this video is worth watching with the 1, 2, 3 stuff what you have to do. Remove the details of the model, remove the roles, and remove or change the version. And yeah,
Um,
just the tools we already know.
yeah. This is a very lame way of me putting that on the slide. I'm sorry, but yeah, pretty much the points I was making earlier, right? So pretty much remove data sources, replace roles with Power BI permissions, right? Set the Power BI data source version to v3, and then most importantly, ensure you've got M partitions, because that's the only way supported by Power BI Desktop, because obviously, you've got the whole data load experience using Power Query.
Nice. Yeah, very lean process. And so no more questions are here. So great. Thank you, Matthias. And we already know the date for the next talk. It will be the 21st of March, quite a long break
Oh yes, yeah.
because the SQL bits will be in between. And there, maybe we are expecting some surprising news.
Well, actually, there. Well, actually, there's one other conference, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not
Okay.
that's been announced yet. So yeah, sorry, I don't want to get into trouble here. But
Okay. Yeah. There are
um,
interesting
I'll,
times with Power BI.
I'll announce things when they can be announced.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
cool. But
So,
we definitely have SQL bits coming up in mid-March. I'm obviously going there because it's not far from London, and got to go there. It's a must.
cool.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Cool. So very interesting times in Power BI. Yeah, very excited what the future will bring. And thanks again, Matthias. Great talk.
Pleasure, and thanks. Yeah, thanks for hosting this, and hope people found this interesting. One final bit before we leave that, definitely wanted to refer to Kurt's article. There we go. So Kurt actually did a very nice article on on this exact same topic, converting Power BI dataset BIM to a PBIX with pbi-tools. So definitely want to point you at that one. And he's also talking about a few limitations here. Other than that, is pretty much giving you a nice walkthrough. So this is quite similar to what I've just shown.
Cool. Yeah. Donald also says, great. Thank you also, Donald, for all the comments, and thanks to everyone else for watching. See you again.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks very much. Bye.